I want to start having my talks more spontaneously, not reading my notes. So this morning this week I practiced my talk a lot. And at 4 o'clock this morning I was woken by Spirit to change my talk. So I did it. So here we go. There's a lot of symbolism. I got this book called The Trip to Bethlehem. And there's so much symbolism in the journey of the Christmas story. It was mind-blowing to me. And I had written about a lot of it, and it's going to be incorporated in here. But, on the surface, the Christmas story is about the journey which ultimately leads to the birth of baby Jesus, right? That's what I learned. But spiritual metaphysics is the search for the truth as it applies to humanity in relationship to the source of all that is, better known as God. In today's world, in our world, how do we use the Christmas story to guide us through our life today? Understanding metaphysics meanings and the traditional Christmas story can guide us on an inner, spiritual, or mystical trip to Bethlehem, where the Christ is born in consciousness, to be the light that shines within us and radiates into the world. When understood metaphysically, the traditional story can serve as a guide to individual spiritual transformation. For the first 3 centuries, the celebration of Jesus' birth was on the same day as the visit by the 3 wise men and John's baptism of Jesus. They were all celebrated on January 6th. Then in the 4th century, the nativity celebrations were widespread when church leaders chose December 25th. The date was chosen because that was the date of the pagans' winter solstice festival, which was a celebration of light, the triumph of sun over darkness. The thinking was, pagans could keep the celebration, but change the reason for it to be. In Malachi 4:2, it says, the coming of the Son of Righteousness was prophesied. So the church leaders saw the birth of Jesus as fulfillment to that prophecy. So that's how the date changed to December 25th. And I love the fact that the solstice, they now evolved so that the solstice is actually on the longest night of the year, the shortest day of the year, which is a little different than December 25th. So it allows us to have both celebrations, which I'm very happy about. But a journey is an important mythic symbol for the process of transformation. The journey that Mary and Joseph took from Nazareth to Bethlehem, where they undergo profound change. Their newborn child is the center of attention and transforms the couple to a family. Metaphysically, this journey is about the birth of our Christ consciousness. It illustrates the inner rebirth process through which the higher self emerges as the center of consciousness, becomes the integrating force, and transforms the individual. The Christ mind represents the higher self or the true self for everybody. It is a mystical journey to a place within ourselves where we can find our full humanity and our own divinity. It is our journey to the inner Bethlehem. It is also a journey that we could see the 12 powers as a pathway to living from or birthing our Christ consciousness. And that's filtered throughout the journey of this story. The first part, the era of Herod the Great, is coming to an end. Charles Fillmore said Herod represents the ego in sense consciousness, which does not understand man's true origin or the law of man's being. The ego or sense consciousness is narrow, jealous, and destructive. The Christmas story is the end of an era and the beginning of another. The Christmas story unfolds in us as we have a well-established sense of who we are. That's the Herod in us. But the Christ or higher self is infinite potential or expression. While we are in bodies, we are human and finite, as well as spiritual and infinite. Our assignment is to transcend our sense of human identity, to give individualized expressions of the Christ. That's what each one of us is, an individual expression of the Christ. The goal is spiritual transformation. Until a person enters the transformative process, the ego revolves around its own concerns. So I'm going to light a candle for the transformational process, for letting go of the ego, which is renunciation, which is one of the 12 powers. Now, months before Mary was told she would give birth to the Christ, the three magi saw the star. The star represents ideas that come from God and that stand for truth. The star that guided the wise men to Bethlehem symbolizes both the idea and the indwelling Christ and the power of that idea to lead us to its realization. Nobody but the Magi or wise men saw the star. When something stirs our inner Magi into action, the journey to Bethlehem within us begins. This affirms the compelling conviction of the Christ idea and the spiritual aspiration. Following the star, acting on this stirring, is called wisdom. I will light a candle for the power that leads to us realization of the truth. I light this candle for wisdom. Mary rode over 100 miles on a donkey while she was pregnant. Donkeys are known to be stubborn and persistent. These are traits expressed by the lower nature of our human beingness. This is our ego. They rode from Nazareth to Bethlehem. They encountered a crowded inn. They encountered so much more on this journey. But Mary and Joseph represent spiritual understanding. They understood that they had to deal with all of these things lovingly and mercifully, with every aspect of what was going on outside of them and inside of them, even the stubborn parts. So I light a candle for spiritual understanding through our stubborn ego and persistence. We're going to get the flamethrower out. I'll show you. Yes. Mary was an ordinary citizen, not of wealth or royalty. This element of commonality has significance for us. Mary represents the feminine aspect of our soul in its receptivity, willingness, and openness to receive. What is striking is when the angel Gabriel appeared and told her she would bear a son, she was completely surprised, and she struggled with that idea. She was stunned and confused, but at the same time, she was very willing to serve that idea. She had no idea how this was going to happen, having a baby with no husband, but she realized that God's activity in the soul is more powerful than intellect. God could do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. This awareness made it safe to imagine the idea to transform her consciousness. It also gave Mary and Joseph the ability to think outside of the box on how they were going to make this happen. So I'm going to light a candle for imagination, receptivity, and openness to all possibilities within ourselves. We got $31,000. Let's get another lighter. After Mary heard she was to give birth to the Christ, she hastily left for a 3-month visit to her friend Elizabeth. Elizabeth was pregnant after believing she was barren for many years. This symbolized the impulse to test the validity of an intuitively received idea, particularly one that seems impossible. Gabriel's angelic message to Mary was validated when Mary saw Elizabeth was pregnant. Mary's faith had been justified and strengthened. Mary's prayer, known as Magnificent in Luke 1:46-55, begins with, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God," proclaimed her faith. I light a candle for faith. Once Mary let go into her faith, she also made clear choice to move forward. Angels, like Gabriel, represent high ideas, divine ideas. Mary chose to accept and nurture this divine idea of having this baby that would bless the world. When Spirit has given us a divine idea that will bless our world, what is the first thing we do? I can tell you the first thing I did was like, no way. That is not happening. I'm too old to start studying to become a minister. I cried. I was like, no way. So you may hear yourself say, I don't understand why this is mine to do. I'm not smart enough. I'm not rich enough. We are all so good at arguing for our limitations. I know I am. If there isn't that part of us that recognizes the divine, we have to find it. And it says, you can do this. I can do this. If and when you say yes to it, your life is going to really, really transform. Mine has. Practicing saying, I can do this. This is our receptivity to divine ideas and faith in the intuition that comes from above and comes from within. It may show up as you need to take more steps to create peace in your relationships. It may show up as I need to take more things to create harmony in our world. What the divine is saying to you is that this is something Spirit wants to express, and God wants to express it through you. God wants to use you to do it. And we have the choice, right? We have free will. The Christmas story, the angel Gabriel, wasn't just speaking to Mary, it's speaking to all of us. And that we too are blessed by divine ideas. We too are here to bring forth divine ideas that are uniquely ours to bless us and the world. We are using our faculty of will by making the choice to take our gift, the divine idea, and matching it to the need in the world, that blesses everyone. I light a candle for the power of will, to seeing our gifts and choosing to bring them to the world. See, even in lighting the candles, it's not an easy journey. Then we have Nazareth. That's where Mary and Joseph lived. Mary was an ordinary citizen of the city, but Nazareth is a place of lower consciousness. Since it is not a place of higher consciousness, they were guided to leave. They had to take that arduous trek from Nazareth to the place of higher consciousness, which is going to take a lot of strength. Nazareth is in both you and I. For some, Nazareth consciousness comes alive when they're in traffic. For me, Nazareth consciousness comes alive when I try to do things perfectly. I think you talked about that in the song. And I was very nervous about this talk, and even in lighting the candles. Perfectly. That's my Nazareth mind consciousness. We need to leave our Nazareth state of consciousness to go to a higher level of consciousness, receive divine ideas, and this all takes strength. So I light a candle for strength to see our lower state of consciousness and to do what it takes to rise above it. The shepherds, there's a lot of shepherds in the Christmas story, and there's a lot more sheep in the Christmas story. The shepherds represent the forces in the unconscious within us that protect and guard the valuable human virtues, which are represented by the sheep. These virtues, honesty, prudence, temperance, courage, justice, clarity, and compassion, provide us with the potential for expressing oneness with all that is. The angel went to the shepherds and told them, "The birth of the child is for them and will bring joy to all of the people," indicating that with the emergence of the Christ mind, a profound change occurs. They now know that they could leave their flock, leave their wealth, untended to find the child, because these sheep are in God's hands. Our virtues are in God's hands and God's care, and no one can ever take them away from us. Awareness of these virtues is divine love. It represents thoughts that are faithful to God. True love, divine love, is realizing our oneness with all that is. So I'm going to light a candle to shine on our virtues, the potential for oneness. I light this candle for divine love. Okay, this one. What is this? Order and balance. Every step of the journey had to be in the order that they were for Christ to be born. Even after the birth, the order was important. Joseph moved his family. He had a dream, a vision. So he moved his family into a house, which symbolizes the thinking nature's full acceptance of the Christ, to take proper care of Mary and baby Jesus. Just as Mary and the baby have priority in the household, the welfare of our soul and the emergent Christ should have priority and claim the center of our consciousness. They lived in Bethlehem. Bethlehem, it means the house of bread, food, sustenance. Metaphysically, the city represents a consciousness of omnipresent substance or divine energy, which provides everything needed to create and sustain everything, including the emerging Christ. There are no walls in Bethlehem, which means anyone can enter. It is up a hill, which means we will rise above to reach that state of consciousness where we find the Christ within. I light a candle for order and living in our higher consciousness. The three gifts of the Magi represent spiritual power, the power of power. They are gold and incense, of frankincense and myrrh. Gold, Charles Fillmore says, represents spiritual gifts, the riches of spirit, and the consciousness of the omnipresent richness of substance. Incense depicts the process of transmutation. Even when smoke is gone, the incense is detected by the smell. It symbolizes the inner communication with God that rises consciousness and produces outer changes. Frankincense is a symbol for holiness or purity, the presence of God and the potential for transmutation of focusing on the material world to focus on the spiritual world. Myrrh is a symbol for attracting power of love, peace, and bliss, and the eternity of spirit. It is impactful for the Christmas story because Christ is eternal. So I light a candle for the power of power and the richness of spirit. Zeal is present in every step of our life. As we take this trip to Bethlehem, zeal equips us to protect and progress we have made toward the Christ consciousness and in our pursuit for higher thinking. Zeal is known as God's unknown flow in life. Zeal's effect can be hectic and frantic and fizzle easily in the material world. But when practiced with love, wisdom, and understanding, it becomes very balanced. Zeal enables us to respond fully to inspiration from God by directing mental, emotional, and physical resources toward the realization of God's purpose within each and every one of us. Joseph received the inspiration from a dream to find a house. He willingly does what he is guided to do to protect his family and to contribute to its growth and development. This is what happens when the spiritually inspired intellect uses zeal. When the faculties are spiritually balanced and zeal is active, we do not need to depend upon only our limited human intellect, for God will guide us every step of the way. I light a candle for the power of zeal in all that we do. Hidden in the depths of the psyche, which is Egypt, Christ is protected and nurtured by the thinking, which is Joseph, and the feeling nature, which is Mary. As a spiritual power in us, the faculty of life directs the work of all other faculties toward the full development of higher self, the Christ idea we are designated to express. So I light a candle for life. So, we're all on a journey, and we're all on the same journey of living from our Christ consciousness. When we have divine ideas and can't figure out how to make them happen in the usual way, it's time to think out of the box. It's time to go within. It's time to ask for guidance. Oftentimes, and it's not comfortable to take this journey, right? Mary was on a donkey for 100 miles. Maybe we can't even imagine in our human minds how it's going to happen, but it does. It has, and it always will. If we are going to be the opening for that which is divine, that which is greater, then we must be receptive. We must be willing to be in service to that idea. We must be willing to birth it in the way that maybe we ourselves cannot imagine. We have to be willing to give ourselves over to the greater purpose. The greater purpose to be expressed in our daily work and profession. The greater purpose waiting to come forth to make this world a better place for our children and our grandchildren. Mary and Joseph find themselves in Bethlehem, which means, as I said, the house of sustenance and bread. They left an environment of mediocrity and entered into an environment where they begin to manifest and sustain. They need to carry out this idea. They ultimately manifest Jesus, who is our way shower, our Christ consciousness. Where do we need to leave our mediocrity, our mediocre thinking behind to enter the consciousness of peace? You may think when you get a divine idea that you are not special enough to bring about that idea. Who else is God going to ask if she doesn't ask us? You will find yourself in a place in life where you know you are being prompted to go to a higher state of consciousness. This may manifest as a current relationship lacking in love and harmony, and it is up to us to bring it to the higher level. You may find it's about your body saying, I need better food, I need regular exercises, healthier ways of living. You may see the children of the world in need of something you can give. The universe is saying to expect the unexpected. The journey of birthing the Christ mind in you is not ordinary. Even though we all have the ability to experience it or opportunity, we have to be open to receiving it. It is not ordinary to follow a divine idea that is given to you. We have to follow the guidance. There will be twists and turns. It all begins with our receptivity to whether we are open or not to God's divine idea. If you are not receptive, we are not making a manger of our hearts, and we will forever remain in Nazareth, or the Nazareth state of mind. We will then miss what Paul calls the Christ in you is your hope of glory. Every character, every dwelling, every situation, every item within that story is either realized within us or is a potential in us. Active in our consciousness or latent in our consciousness. They all play a part in our transformative trips to our spiritual Bethlehem. All rebirth processes are different. You get to decide your own journey. Our expressions of the higher self are different. our higher self, is the divine idea of the image of God, which is different for everyone. We don't get a letter from God. We get divine ideas, and we get it in many ways. We get them when we stop arguing for our limitations. Where's God in that, right? We get them when we are willing to sit and listen in prayer and meditation. We get them when we're willing to ask for guidance and when we're willing to follow that guidance. So I want to close by saying, take a note of where you are today and who you are today. This way, when next Christmas comes along, you can see how open and receptive you have been to birthing the Christ and what a difference it has made in you. I want to say thank you. I am your sister in power, prayer, and possibility. I love you. I appreciate you. And I behold the Christ in you. Until I see you again, until we're here again, know that you're blessed and a blessing.